Thank you. Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, within the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashni K.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution to the debate on this motion moved by the Honourable Member, Mr. David Patterson, on the subject of the location of Guyana shore-based services. I listened, sir, with great and keen interest to the contributions made by our colleagues on that side of the House. And Mr. Speaker, as speaker after speaker on that side of the House stood up and regaled us with almost evangelical zeal of the virtues of this motion and the importance of what they described, just to borrow the words of the last speaker, the importance of regulation, zoning, etc. One might perhaps be forgiven for thinking that there was some measure of seriousness and sincerity in the arguments that were offered by our colleagues on that side of the House, had they perhaps spent the last 10, 15, 20 years in opposition. One would scarcely believe that a party that believes so fervently in regulations, in zoning, in a multi-agency task force to prepare a land use policy, in all of these measures that are proposed, one could scarcely imagine that these arguments were being offered by a party that spent the last 5 years in government. Sir, it causes one to wonder if the APNU-AFC believes, as they appear now in their current incarnation, if they believe, as they appear now in their current incarnation, that a land use policy is so important, one has to ask oneself, what were they doing for the last 5 years? What were they doing for the last 5 years? Did they set up a multi-agency? Mr. Ramjatan, sir, spoke about the fact that we do not have time. We need to move with haste to set up this multi-agency task force and prepare this land use policy. We do not have time. Sir, they just spent 5 years in government and left nothing to show for it except green-painted buildings, green-painted fences, green napkins, green letterheads. Look around, sir. That was what was important for them. Green frivolity. Frivolity. They spent 5 years, sir, engaged in an excursion of frivolity in government and have left absolutely no policy of any significance, no new project, no legacy of which to speak except a legacy of disrepair and disgrace. And they come now, sir, to this House, and stand up and dare to lecture this House and this country this House and this country on how important a land use policy is? Sir, the very minister who was responsible for this sector cannot demonstrate a single effort to implement any of the things, cannot point to a single step that he has taken during his term in office. And now the minute that while he was in office, sir, his priority was on getting birthday gifts, bangles, bracelets. That was his priority, sir. And now that he has stepped out of office, suddenly, sir, he's concerned. He's concerned about a land use policy. Where were you for 5 years? Where were you for 5 years? Sir, to give you an example of the kind of historical revisionism, that the AP and AFC would like to subject this country to. I will cite only one example. Well, in fact, I will cite one for the time being. I might, as I go along, cite a few more. But I will use merely the point made by the Honourable Member, Mr. Ramjatan, about the signing bonus. Sir, I wish to quote from the Kaichor News of November 23rd, 2017. And the headline reads, sir, here it is. The headline reads, "No signing bonus with Exxon Mobil," says Finance Minister. And there is a picture of the then Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan. Sir, and I will quote from this article. Sir, Mr. Jordan stated that such a claim, and he was referring to the claim that there was a signing bonus. Mr. Jordan stated that such a claim is a figment of the imagination. Mr. Jordan stated that such a claim is a figment of the imagination, and that there is, and I will quote in inverted commas, in quotation marks, and that there is no agreement for any bonus. On the 23rd of November 2017. While, sir, there is a very important chronological point that needs to be made. There is a very important chronological point to be made. Because while Mr. Jordan was making this point, note the date, 23rd of November 2017, that the claim is a figment of the imagination and that there is no agreement for any bonus. On the 23rd of November 2017, on the 20th of September 2016, sir, on the 20th of September 2016, his ministry had written to the central bank to open a bank account designated signing bonus granted by Exxon Mobil in September 2016. What is further, sir, that when questioned on this matter, Mr. Jordan said and is on camera as saying, "I don't know. I cannot tell you. I wasn't part of any negotiations. So I can't tell you about how we arrived at 18 million. I couldn't tell you who negotiated the thing. I don't know, to be quite honest. You know, in fact, and this is the pièce de résistance. This is the pièce de résistance, sir. You know, in fact, I thought it was a gift. And that, sir, is not a figment of my imagination. That, sir, is not a figment of anybody's imagination in Guyana. That, sir, is captured on video for posterity. So this business about historical revisionism and trying to rewrite history and trying to deceive the people of Guyana, sir, will not work as it did not work on every other occasion in the past. As it did not work in the past, sir. The people of Guyana are well aware of the facts. They're well aware of the facts. And I cite this, sir, only as one example, and there are many, many, many others. There are many, many others. The fact of the matter is, sir, that on literally every question of public policy, let us take the one that is at hand, land use policy. I have searched, sir, the APNU AFC manifesto. I have 2 successive manifestos. Since they are such champions of land use policy, I have searched, sir, their 2015 manifesto. Yes, as a matter of fact, I seem to recall in 2015 they very reluctantly and belatedly released the manifesto, if I remember correctly. Sir, I have searched the APNU AFC manifesto of 2015. I have searched, sir, the APNU AFC manifesto of 2020. Now, I readily confess, sir, my eyesight rather, is not as sharp as it used to be when I was younger. But I searched copiously, and I was unable to find in both of the last 2 successive manifestos of the APNU AFC a single reference to land use policy, sir. I was unable to find a single reference to land use policy. But now, as soon as they are in opposition, as soon as the people of Guyana rightfully and justifiably consign them to the ranks of the opposition, they suddenly embrace the virtues of a land use policy. Let me contrast, sir. Let me contrast, sir, our People's Progressive Party Civic Manifesto for 2020. And read for you, I will do so very quickly because I believe a speaker before me already referenced it. I believe Honorable Minister Ejel already referenced it. We stated very clearly that we will establish a formal interagency mechanism for the purpose of coordination amongst the forestry, mining, agriculture, settlements and infrastructure sectors, etc., etc. That we will address intersectoral issues regarding the implementation of land use policy, that we will implement a national land use policy with a regional dimension and which harmonizes residential and commercial interests. This, sir, is a direct quotation from the People's Progressive Party Manifesto for 2020. From the People's Progressive Party Manifesto for 2020, sir. And so, sir, yes, in fact, we are delivering all of our manifesto promises. Did you deliver the $9,000 per bag of paddy? Did you deliver the 20 or 40% increase that you promised sugar workers? Instead of we actually deliver what we promise. We actually deliver what we promise. You promised to cut taxes and instead you put VAT on electricity, VAT on water, VAT on education, VAT on health, VAT on heavy equipment, VAT on everything. And then you say we cut taxes. You added 200 new taxes. But you had promised to cut taxes. And now you dare to come here and speak about delivering promises, sir? And now you dare to come and speak about delivering promises? Sir, so let me make it crystal clear. Let me make it crystal clear, sir, that whereas for 5 years, the AP and UAFC engaged in nothing but a land grab for their cronies. Now suddenly they've woken up to the virtues of a land use policy. Now suddenly, sir, where is the we can speak about the Rigorsville that was being established. We can speak about the Rigorsville that was being established. We can speak about the Rigorsville that was being established and all of the land that was given away after the no confidence motion and indeed after the 2nd of March 2020 when they had already lost government. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, let me go further, sir. If one really were to examine this motion, one would see, first of all, clear evidence that the APNU-AFC is seeking now to advocate actions that they made no effort to take while they were in government. But I will go further, sir, and I will point out that the motion in its very formulation, points to the gross ineptitude and incompetence that characterized the APNU-AFC in government. It points to the ineptitude and incompetence that characterized their time in government. And I will point out just a few simple examples that are reflected in the formulation of this motion. Mr. Speaker, first of all, the first be it resolved clause makes reference, or calls rather, for a national task force to prepare a land use policy. Sir, it would appear that the author of this motion is of the view that a national land use policy would somehow dictate which areas are to be used for what. And whether the Berbice River or the Demerara River or where should be used for shore base and where should not be used for shore base. That, sir, reflects a fundamental lack of understanding of what a land use policy really will do. A land use policy, sir, will not dictate what area should be used for what. A land use policy, sir, will instead outline the broad principles that will govern the management and use of land. Objectives for land use, including issues such as economic growth and efficient uses of land, issues related to multiple purposes of land use, issues on addressing how land conflicts can be addressed and avoided, what types of land use should be promoted. Nothing to do with whether to use Berbice River, Demerara River for land. And so the mere conceptualizing of this motion that somehow a land use policy will dictate where to put shore base and where not to put shore base reflects a fundamental lack of understanding of what land use policy aims to do, first of all. Secondly, sir, the mere fact that the motion refers to a land use policy specifically, we hear the Honourable Member, Mr. Ramjatan, speaking of a land use policy for shore base. His words, not mine. A land use policy for shore base. And that's reflective of the thinking, because hear what the motion says, sir. The motion speaks of a land use policy specifically for the location of the oil and gas sector. Sir, by very definition, a land use policy, by very definition, cannot focus on a particular sector. By very definition, you have alternative and competing uses for land. You have complementary uses for land. You have support services to feed the oil and gas sector. You have issues related to transport infrastructure to connect to the logistic services that are required. You have issues related to commercial and residential use of land. Are you going to carve out a land use policy? You're going to carve out a land use policy, sir, only to dictate where you're going to put the shore base, without any consideration of what you're going to do with transport infrastructure, what you're going to do with connectivity, what you're going to do with industrial and commercial use of land, what you're going to do with energy supply, what you're going to do with urbanization and population location. Sir, they want to do a land use policy. They want to do a land use policy for shore base. And sir, nothing could better illustrate the incompetence and ineptitude of the APNUAFC. Sir, and so I submit that in addition to the grandstanding, in the Caribbean there's a word, I believe, I hope I'm using it correctly, there's a word called pomposetting. You sit down in government for 5 years, out of which for 2 years you were squatting illegally. You did nothing except paint fence green, paint building green, print letterhead green. Christmas party, 50 million. That is all you did. That is all you did for 5 years in government, sir. That's all you did for 5 years. And now when the people of Guyana have consigned you to where you belong, you come here and you're pomposetting. And if you want to see more evidence of pomposetting, sir. If you want to see more evidence of pomposetting, sir, hear what the motion says. The motion says that it is the preference calls for this National Assembly to express a preference for future onshore bases to be in the counties of Berbice and Essequibo, to ensure parity in development of the oil and gas industry. And I see something about equal level. I don't know if I'm reading the correct version. Equitable, perhaps I'm misreading it, or maybe it's misprinted. And the equitable, I suspect that was intended to be the equitable development across Guyana for the benefit of all citizens. Sir, Berbice and Essequibo. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had the privilege of participating in an event hosted by the United Nations International Labour Organization. They were launching a report that the ILO had commissioned on the socio impact of the decision to close the several estates during 2016-2017. Sir, that report, as I said this morning, and as I will say this evening for the purposes of entering it into the record of this National Assembly, that report, sir, documented documented the callous and unconscionable manner in which those estates were closed. And worse yet, speaking about money, oh yes, that is what was said. What was said? Are your people? Are your people? Are your people? Well, you know what? All of the people of Guyana are the PPP's people.
That's right.
Sir, the report, yes, and I can repeat what the people of Skeldon have said to me. I can repeat what the people of Skeldon have said to me on the trauma that they faced when the Skeldon estate was closed, sir. Sir, tens of thousands of families, and this is not the People's Progressive Party saying it, we have said it. We have said it, sir. But this is an ILO commissioned report that documents the socio-economic havoc, the trauma that was inflicted upon tens of thousands of Guyanese people. Not just workers, but their dependents and families. Not just their dependents and families, but the owners of small businesses who were dependent on sugar workers and their families going to their small business when they collected their pay on Friday. The villages that were dependent on the sugar economy. The entire community is the report. In fact, I quoted this morning from a paragraph of the report that spoke about the fact that sugar was inseparable from the socio-economic fabric of communities. The report said Rose Hall was not just a sugar estate. Rose Hall is a town, an entire town whose economy was built around sugar. The report spoke about Skeldon and Corriverton, and the fact that Skeldon was not just a sugar estate. Skeldon was contiguous to Corriverton, a large population center whose economy was dependent on sugar. And so, sir, that report documented the fact that a commission of inquiry initiated by the APNU examined the sugar industry and did not, stopped short, was the language the report used, stopped short of recommending the closure of any sugar estate, but notwithstanding that their own commission of inquiry stopped short of recommending closure of any sugar industry, that APNU AFC government still proceeded to close the sugar industry, inflicting hardship on tens of thousands of people, wreaking havoc in their lives, destroying the village economy and the rural agricultural economy. Oh yes. So don't come now, Mr. Speaker, through you, sir, if I may, to honorable members on that side of the House. Don't come now and cry crocodile tears about Berbice and Essequibo and Pomposette. And Pomposette, when you spent 5 years in government and cannot point to a single thing that you did to bring development to Berbice and Essequibo. Don't come now and Pomposette. Let me say this, sir. This motion is nothing but rank political opportunism. But it has one real motive, well, it has multiple motives, one of which is an attempt, yet another flimsy attempt to delude and deceive the people of Guyana. But it has one other significant intention. The explicit design of the APNU AFC for several years has been to frustrate development in Guyana. The explicit design. They, by their own actions, deliberately stopped and frustrated and derailed the Milo Falls project. Had they not done so, sir, and I will say this, the Milo Falls project was being developed by some of the largest and most credible international investors in the world. That is correct. And they stepped in, and by their deliberate actions, stepped in and frustrated the Amila Falls project. You know why, sir? Because their design is to deny the people of Guyana any development whatsoever. They rather deny the people of Guyana development for cheap political purposes. And that is what this motion is all about. To deny and delay the massive developments that are going to unfold in Guyana as a result of the restoration of democracy despite their fervent efforts. The massive development that is about to unfold in Guyana. This motion has the objective of seeking to delay and frustrate development in Guyana. And for that reason, sir, it should be roundly and wholeheartedly rejected. I thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The Honorable Member.